And broadcasting from my home.
You guys still there?
Yeah, but the music wouldn't stop or something.
Yeah, the music wasn't stopping. I could barely hear you guys talking. I'm like, yeah, chicken joint.
All right. Well, let's just call it technical difficulties and push through, because
I mean, you
We can always remix the intro when you get back home if we have to.
yeah, I'll have to figure that out.
I was gonna say, count on me to do whatever you need after, however it comes out.
Yeah, at this point, it's brand new recording software. It's everything new. So,
Yeah.
Anyhow, we'll figure it out. But I'm just not that concerned about it because I'm tired and I've been up since 4:30.
Central.
Yeah. So, hey.
At least run your script, right?
No, we're not unscripted at all. But that's okay.
Cool.
So, I'm in Boston.
Yeah, you are.
And so here was my day today, okay? I got up at 4:30 Central Time, drove to Milwaukee, parked my car, took a bus to the airport, well, a shuttle to the airport, got on my plane, flew...
Headed where? Headed where?
To Boston.
Oh.
Flew to Boston. I watched the movie Rush on the plane, which if you're an automotive guy and you like car movies, watch that movie. It's really good.
Okay.
Toured around by myself a little bit, trying to find a place to store luggage. Couldn't find any place, and then eventually just bunkered down by the State House while I waited for Chris Williams and Kanji. I forget his last name now. They come pick me up.
Kanji Bates.
Kanji Bates, that's the guy. British guy. Lovely guy. And the three of us proceeded to do sort of a walking tour of the Boston Commons area. We went to the Cheers bar.
Yeah, I saw the picture. That looked cool.
That was fun. And then we walked around the Boston Japanese Festival, which was interesting. And there was lots of cosplay stuff going on, which was strange and interesting all at the same time. And then slowly more people started showing up, and eventually we ended up at Fogo de Chao, and
nice.
It was a lot of meat, and it was really good.
Are you meat drunk, Britton?
A little bit.
I could tell.
That's okay. So I'm really tired, and we'll just kind of work through this episode as quickly as we can. I should mention at the outset that this is brand new recording because I'm mobile, so it's all running through the Mac, and if there's audio problems and if this thing doesn't work at all, I apologize.
Yep,
so
uncharted territory here.
Yeah, but I also just recently did a V Brown Bag again, and it was hosted by none other than Mr. Ariel Sanchez, who is with us.
Yo.
Ariel, thank you for being on the Gigacast.
I am happy to be a guest.
So, Tony, what's been going on with you these last few weeks? I want to stop talking now. Is what
it's been a whirlwind. I mean, we had a Wisconsin.
Tony, take over.
Yeah,
we got the beat sweats.
We had our Wisconsin UserCon on April 5th, which is a great success. We were able to get Ariel out there, Tim Davis, Josh Fidel. We had a lot of great speakers, had a good time networking and learning with everybody, and that was a good success. I went over to Matt Heldstab had invited me to go over to North Central Wisconsin VMUG and do a talk on my vSAN upgrade. I did that on
how'd that go?
April 19th and went pretty good. Got to hang out with all those guys. That was a lot of fun. That was a couple of days after like the record snowfall we had. We had like 21.5 inches here.
Yeah, that was a lot of snow.
Yeah, so we had to dig out of that. So that was another adventure. And yeah, we're already planning for our next meeting on May 22nd. Busy.
Yeah. So Ariel, you have been kind of on like a whirlwind VMUG tour recently.
Yes.
Does that sound proper?
Well, what happened was this is the first year that VMUG did a call for papers. It used to be that if you wanted to like travel to a VMUG specifically, you had to, coordinate with the VMUG leaders and the VMUG team, try to get a speaking slot, most likely a keynote. But this year they changed things, and I really think for the better, because when they open up this call for papers, now the VMUG leaders get this list of like 200 sessions that the community sent out, and they can say, apart from your your morning keynote and your lunch keynote or afternoon keynote, you also have money to bring a community speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So both times, Milwaukee and Denver, I have sessions that have been picked up as a community speaker where VMUG is paying for my expenses to get there, and I get to talk not just from the perspective of a VMware employee, but more of a V community guy. Typically the things that I really are interested and passionate about.
Yeah.
So, and the best part is like I'm not in technical marketing. I'm a TAM, so it's not like I'm typically told, hey, Ariel, if you go to a VMware, you need to talk about this product. No, I can really talk about anything. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been quite a change from other years. I used to be just go to user cons. I used to drive over. I lived a little while in New York, so I would go, and I'll continue going to their user con just to hang out with friends. There was one in Cincinnati. I drove there. So anytime I can go to a user con just as an attendee, it's fun. And what I used to do at those is I would record an interview for B Brown Bag. Yet since I'm here, I might as well do something. But this time it's been like, no, I'm here for a reason. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
It was fun. It was fun to have you there. I mean, we've had a few user cons, and like it's always been hard to get people to come to. It seems like, or get good VMware people to show up because Wisconsin's such a small market, but
we have a good turnout.
However, I really think that you guys and the VMware leaders have been doing a great job putting Wisconsin on the map. This podcast, Tony Reeves' blog is super popular now. All of the guys that all the things you guys have been doing in the region on the internet have paid off, because I honestly was thrilled to go there. So I can't see how people were not very sure what was going on there with all the exposure you guys are putting out.
Well, that's just, and I think that a lot of this just recently. This, we've only been doing this now for 15 episodes, so it's nothing to sneeze at, I guess. But
Paul's a
Paul,
like he's only his second season, right? So
yeah,
right, yeah, it's very recent, but it's very, very, very it's noticeable.
So Ariel, I had emailed you about some stuff before we did the episode that I maybe wanted to talk to you about, and you seemed to think it was okay. So I'm going to ask you to kind of tell us a little bit about Ariel Sanchez. And first of all, correct me with your name. Is it Ariel Sanchez Moore, or how do you say your full name?
I'm from Costa Rica, right? So we carry two last names. The first one is the father's, the second one is the mother's. My first last name is Sanchez. My second last name is Mora, M-O-R-A. What happens is I try to make my Twitter handle my full name, and Twitter has a maximum limit on characters, so I had to drop the last A. So that's why my Twitter handle is Ariel Sanchez Moore.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying it wrong all the time.
Probably. And
don't worry, I thought his last name was Ariel Sanchez Moore for a long time.
Yeah, and it's funny because in the U.S. people only use one last name, right? So all my emails have ever been Ariel.Sanchez or A Sanchez, or the Mora never gets put into the equation. Even when I go to a restaurant or something, they call me Mr. Mora, I feel so weird because Sanchez is the primary, right?
Yeah.
Even in Costa Rica, they don't call you Mr. Second last name; they call you Mr. First last name.
Mr. First Name.
So yeah, so I've had that. I've actually had that question more than once, so I don't blame you.
So, and the second kind of follow up is, so where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Costa Rica?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
I only moved to the States when I was over 30 years old.
okay. So, forgive me, but you are basically a living, breathing American dream story.
Sure. I'll preface that with not really, but I'll explain. Right.
Okay. So, tell us the story because I want to hear this, and I think it's a good background that I've never heard from you before. So,
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
So,
you're having a lot of other people telling their story. We want to hear yours.
sure. I love it. I actually told a lot of this in a little recording I did with AJ on the Undetected, which is another podcast. But if you already heard that, then it's probably just going to be a lot of a rehash. But I'll try to make this interesting, right? I'll try to
Sure.
make this even better. So I was born in 19. I shouldn't put my birth date on the internet, but I'm about 37 years old, and
That's okay.
yeah, was born in Costa Rica. My father and mother Costa Rican, and I lived there till about 5 years old when my father took a job in Honduras. Honduras is 2 countries above Costa Rica in Central America. People tend to confuse it with Puerto Rico, which is an island. Costa Rica is a country in Central America. So I went to live to Honduras 11 years, came back. 16-year-old, basically finished high school in Costa Rica. That was the whole objective that my parents wanted me to get into college, into Costa Rica. So I went to college knowing that I love computers, but I had no idea IT existed. So I went for an electronics engineering degree. And by the end of that, I found that we had a networking elective, which basically gave you the first 2 CCNA courses. And I was like, oh, geez, this is great. I can learn online and it's pretty cool. I want more. So that's how I got into IT. I got into IT by way of Cisco. I started working as a NOC engineer, and it was a fun little job because we were doing 3 languages. We were doing English, Spanish, and Portuguese. I didn't know any Portuguese. They actually brought on site an instructor, and she was super nice. So we stayed for her classes and we learned Portuguese. So we were taking calls from people, and this used to be, think of it like a very small Western Union. Mm-hmm. So NOC engineer meant monitoring uptime, actually carrying out the playbooks when something broke. So we only had one server guy and one network guy. And if they were on call, they would tell us, okay, so that probably means that this is down. So go ahead and run scenario 3. And we would log into the devices and do this thing and see if it worked.
Wow.
It was pretty cool because they got a lot of exposure, right? Mm-hmm. I had done a lot of work with SNMP monitoring as part of my graduation project. So when I came into this company, they were the NOC, but they didn't have like a monitoring station. So I helped them set that up, and I traveled to Belgium for a while because they had just bought an IBM System Z mainframe that they were going to run SUSE virtual machines on. That was my first time seeing virtual machines in production. I had seen like VMware Virtual Server in college, but I thought it was cute. But this was my first time seeing Linux and seeing virtual machines. So I came back, gave that training, got promoted to team lead. Then at some point I said, well, this $1,000 a month salary is not going to cut it, right? I want to get a master's. Let me see if I can get a raise. And they said, we really don't want you to get a master's. Deadpan. And I'm like, this doesn't sound like the job for me. Yeah. So I looked for another job that paid $2,000 a month. And I found it as a end user support coordinator for basically the call centers. Costa Rica has a bunch of call centers because people found out that they liked the accent better and they could find like technical people. Okay. So I was the end user support coordinator for a company called Stream. Became manager, became regional, which was Central America and Latin America manager for end user support. But my boss moved from end user support to servers. and I had some server experience from my previous knock job. And I told him, listen, I would really like to continue working with you. And he said, well, I have 2 positions, and they're really good positions, they're global positions, but they're out in the US. Let's go back a little bit. When I came back from Honduras, I basically started living in front of a girl who was in the 7th grade when I was in the 10th grade. And we would get on the bus together and stuff like that. And she was nice and everything, but nothing happened there. We both moved out of there. She found me back on High Five, and we started talking on Messenger while she was doing her stuff, and I was finishing my thesis or my graduation project.
Mhm.
And we found out that we liked each other. So that's how I met Amy, my wife. We basically started dating the day that I graduated. I literally
Cool.
started working the day after that. So
Nice.
I've always been working with Amy with me, and we got married in October 2010. 10 actually, which is what for me was super geeky. It was like, I want to get married a date I will never forget, and it calculate. So 10 it fell on a Sunday, which was what she wanted, and I wanted to be geeky, so it worked out really well.
Cool.
She is her father is originally from New Hampshire, which is very close to from where Chris Williams is actually. And when this came out and my boss told me that he had some positions there, I told him, well, I'm married to an American citizen. If you let me participate and if I get the job, would you guys wait for me to do the paperwork? Now, my wife had always said that at some point she wanted to move to the States, but we couldn't see when would be a good idea. My wife's a doctor. For her to practice in the United States, it's like a year and a half of medical exams and things.
Mhm.
Plus, you would need to get into a residency. She was already in a pediatrics residency in Costa Rica. So this job, which I did get through the interview, was the one opportunity where we would move with me having a job with relocation paid. She quit her pediatrics residency, and we moved to Denver. And that's where I lived from 2011 to 2014,
Okay.
working as a system and a sysadmin that was basically doing SEP, semantic endpoint protection
Oh, I'm
management for
sorry.
this global company. No, it wasn't bad at all. I mean, honestly,
how many
compared
were you managing in that?
55,000.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's a
So
lot.
these were good positions, right?
Well, no wonder that
But
was a full-time job. That's a lot of machines.
right, but it was also because I was the junior admin, so I was learning a lot from the
Mhm.
Windows side and a little Linux. That's when I came into contact with VMware. I got it much better than a guy that got assigned Blue Coat, which was the internet filtering for 55,000 people, and he would get called all the time. Compared to that,
Ouch.
antivirus is a cake in the
Well, yeah.
walk in the park.
Was it still on the stream side that you did the SEP stuff, Ariel?
Still, yes, this was still on stream. So the same company moved me over. Legally, I had to quit in Costa Rica, and they rehired me, but no problem there. When I moved to Denver, we didn't have anybody IT-wise. So I was the end user support for their small office. I was the data center guy because we had a co-location with ViaWest. And I had to still to do my sysadmin job. That's how I also met Edgar. Edgar Sanchez is the guy that does documentation with me, which is an open source documentation project based on PowerCLI. Edgar also was working for Stream out of El Salvador, and he ended up in Denver in a very similar situation with me, like me, and we basically started working there together side by side. And
Cool.
yeah, so Edgar's story and mine are very much similar, except he moved to Alabama when he started having kids. So at some point, I was
brought
working
you
from
to
home.
Pennsylvania then?
Oh, hold on. The story is not even halfway there.
Goes for a little bit yet.
I was working from home at that point because we had hired someone for the data center. The office was stable. I could focus on my sysadmin things. I had decided that, you know what, I like VMware. All the senior guys are doing it. This sounds pretty cool. I'm going to buy a book. So I went into Barnes and Nobles in the Southlands Mall where we used to live and bought the Mastering vSphere book by Scott Lowe. And one of the first things that I saw was that he had his blog there. So I subscribed to his blog. Didn't have a Twitter account by then. He sent out, first of all, I noticed he had moved to Denver. And second, he sent out a note saying, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a time when Alistair put a note saying that putting the user back into user groups. And Scott Lowe said, as part of this, making sure that more users are involved in their user groups, I want to mentor 5 people to give their first talk at a VMUG. I was the first reply on that blog post.
Wow.
Nice.
Because first of all, I saw it in my email, and of course, I wanted to sign up. And second, my idol is offering to mentor me. And third, he's local. I can actually go meet with him in the same city, right?
That's awesome.
So that was how I got to meet Scott Lowe. He helped me when I did my first VMUG talk was how to configure the MEM tool for equalogic arrays. And that was like a whole thing for us because we had a bunch of equalogic arrays. And this was a PSP plugin, very similar to what the EMC power path is. But it was free. So it was something that was quite used. I remember, and this comes into play later, that in that same VMUG meeting, Scott Seifert was introduced as a new leader. And I'll tell you a little story about Scott later on, but suffice to say that he picked my session for me to go to Denver very soon after. Now, right after that, after I gave that presentation, my wife Amy had gotten into a pediatric residency in Brooklyn, New York. So I asked around and I said, hey, I'm basically working from home here. Would you guys mind if I move to New York and keep the same job? And they said, no, go ahead. We'll work out the state taxes and all those things and go. So we moved a little after, like 2 months after. I was like, oh, hold on, prices are very different. Could you guys give me a bump? And they did give me a bump. So once I got to New York, I had gotten my VCP in Denver. I was super happy about that. But I said, I know that I'm moving out in 3 years out of here because we didn't love New York. It was way too expensive for what we really planned to do. It's great with New York salaries. You can get your piece of land there, but it's nothing like you can get in Texas or any other state, right?
Yeah.
So I decided I want to really get into VMware. I got my VCP. Now I want to get my VCAPs. I also want to get more involved with VMUG. I had talked at one before. So maybe like a week after I moved to New York, the New York City UserCon happened. And I went to that. I met Melissa Palmer. I met Anton. I met a bunch of people. I think I saw Niren, but I didn't really say hi. Mike Foley was presenting. I asked him a question. It was a lot of fun. And I thought, man, those New York VMUGs really are amazing compared to the small VMUG that I presented in Denver, right? I didn't know what a UserCon was. But I did know that I wanted to get more involved with it. So by pure luck, I think I started using Twitter by then. And somebody gave me, actually, I wish I could remember his name right now. I know he's a TAM for VMware. He actually posted on Twitter, hey, I have an extra voucher for VCAP because anyone use it, it expires in a week. And we checked out that I could schedule the exam. And of course, New York has 17 testing centers, so I was able to schedule it. And I passed it. And I was so happy with that. And then I got my VCAP deploy. I made sure that I talked to my VMA leaders. I presented anytime I could. And I got to understand more and more that Twitter was where it was at. Like I could talk to people. People in the V community want to help each other. I could still, I noticed that Scott Lowe, for example, put his thoughts on Twitter and some of them made it to a blog post. But if I only was reading his blog, I was missing the conversation. Mm-hmm. So I was like, man, Twitter is really where it's at. This is where I really want to be more focused. And I noticed that my local VMUG was not using their Twitter account much. So that was my first thing when I approached them. I said, I want to help you at least with your Twitter account. There were already 3 leaders. I never expected that I could get at it as a 4th leader. But, from stepping up and trying to help, it ended up that they accepted me as a 4th leader. I was like, I didn't know you could do that, but awesome. And by the time my wife finished her pediatrics residency, and she was getting into, okay, what are we going to do next? And she said, I want to do pediatric nephrology, which is kidneys. She interviewed all over the U.S., even Milwaukee. I was telling Paul the other day that I could have been his neighbor. Well, all of your neighbors.
Yeah.
But she finally decided on Pittsburgh. So when that was done, I reached out on the V Expert. No, I got V Expert in New York. I reached out, and AJ Kuftik was the guy that introduced me to Pittsburgh. Told me, it's a solid town. It has this and that. These are the areas you should consider. Well, she's going to be working here. You want to be looking at this.
Mhm.
I remember I traveled to the UserCon, and the Pittsburgh UserCon it's normally like the first ones of the year. And I came here just to meet people, just because I wanted to see how things were. Also, you're in Boston, I'm a huge Patriots fan. And the Steelers always seem to be playing the AFC Championship against the Patriots. So when I wore...
Yeah.
Say it again?
In recent history, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I was wearing my Patriots stuff in New York, I would normally get called out. New York gets a bad rep. It's not a bad town. But I would get called out all the time.
Oh, yeah. They hate Patriots in New York.
MFing. No, you know what the worst part is? They love the Patriots because the 2 times that they run into in the Super Bowl, they win. So it even hurt.
Well, yeah,
so right, my little heart, that was a dagger in my heart every time they told me that. So
David
I said, yeah, shut up. So I came to Pittsburgh wearing the Brady jersey, and I want to see how this town reacts to that. And they looked at me, but they didn't say anything until they finally got in, hey, how are you? What's with the jersey? It was a very polite way of coming to it. I wasn't getting called out. It's not like people have told me don't do that stuff in Philly, right? Philly people were crazy.
Yeah,
So I really liked the town. I met some people. I introduced myself to the VMware employees. I had introduced myself to the leaders, just letting them know that I was coming. And then I started reaching out to my VExpert network, and I said, anybody know? So that's the answer, right? How I got into Pittsburgh. But I also did a job change at the time. I basically had done the same job. Well, actually, more because of the certifications and the projects. I was really a more of a VMware admin. A bigger company had bought us, so we had gone from 1 or 2 SMEs to 5. There was a team of 5 VMware admins, and it was really, really cool. We learned a lot with each other. Every person had different skill sets. If you guys can hear my cats, they're kind of fighting, so sorry about that.
It's okay.
But when I finally knew I was moving to Pittsburgh, that's when I said, I'm going to test the waters. I could continue doing this remote job, but it's 5 VMware admins. I mean, come on, it's not going to be very much career change here. And I reached out to my network. One of my oldest, he's Adam Osterholt, who now is really involved with VMware Cloud on AWS. He saw that there was a TAM position, and he sent it over and said, I think you would be great for this. So when I came to the interview, which was a week later after the UserCon, guess who I met? Some of the same people I had met last week, right? So it was really cool to see. That helped me through the interview be more calm. And I finally got the job. It's been 1 year since I've been doing this job, 1 year since I moved to Pittsburgh. Been loving it. It's been great. So when I wanted to come back to what you said about the American dream, I really believe the American dream is starting from nothing and being able to make something out of yourself. I honestly had a lot of advantages in life. I went to private school, so my English wasn't that bad. My wife was already American. I've always had people help me. So I in a way, yes, I've been able to do a lot that I maybe never thought I would be able to do. But it's also, it's been also a lot of networking and trying to help others and trying to understand others and trying to make real relationships.
Yeah.
That's how I see it more than anything else.
I agree. I mean, I think, I think the American dream takes many forms for different people from all kinds of different backgrounds. But in the end, I think what really makes the American dream for all of us is, just like you said, doing the hard work, meeting people, making connections, and getting out, putting yourself out there, and just doing it.
Yeah, I've never been shy at
Yeah.
all. Like
And
my
that's
mom used to say that she
Statement.
yeah, like my mom would have people over and she would say, "Hey, Ariel, sing a song." I would sing it like that. I was never a shy kid.
and that I think is what's cool about your story is that, you know, you just did stuff. And you know, you I think are kind of the exception to the rule in the IT world, especially because most IT people are like, you know, me when I was growing up, who doesn't want to talk to anybody, and you know, sit in the back of the room, hiding from everyone, and you know, just yeah,
Well,
be
this
your
is
typical introverted.
kind of a
The
cool
only
episode. This is kind of a cool episode for me too, because you know Ariel is one that pushed me really hard to get involved in the community when I became a V expert, you know, a year ago. Um, in the chat, V expert chat, he's like, "I'm gonna embarrass you, but you're gonna hate me for it, but you'll like it later." And he just basically introduced me to everybody because I felt like, you know, I didn't want to ask stupid questions. He's like, everybody starts greeting, "Hi, I ask stupid questions too. My name is such and such," and it was really hilarious. And you know, through meeting Ariel, we even found out we actually worked for the same company for a while. That was pretty hilarious.
yeah, yeah. I think the actual thing you said is, I said, "Hey, Tony, you're the expert." Like you said, "Yes." How come you're not talking? And you said, "You know, I'm afraid to sound kind of dumb if I do a question there." I'm like, dude, that's the whole other way around. Like, we're all dumb. You know, we're all on our path to somewhere.
Yeah.
We're all gonna need help. And I think
Even
that the expert Slack has been the best thing that has happened to the expert community, because we can finally interact and learn from each other,
Yeah.
not just from reading our blogs, right? But
that to me is kind of the hard point of some of this stuff once you get into, you know, subject matter experts in any technology field, is once you put a blog out or you put a podcast out or you start doing videos or whatever, it's really easy to appear smarter than maybe you really are. And then you have some guy who's just starting out who just learned how to build a Windows server, and now he's getting into all this virtualization stuff, and it looks really, really intimidating really quickly.
yeah,
But and that's
I
sort of the
agree.
thing I'm even learning too, as I like interview more people like yourself, Ariel, that everybody starts somewhere different, and everybody kind of feels initially like, you know, a little fish in a pond of big fish, or a big
yeah.
pond of big fish. And you know, like as I try to increase my NSX knowledge, I find that as well, where like I know like this much about it, and I'm trying to get more, but it's tough.
You know, I love that you brought that point, because one of the reasons why I love to do introductory sessions, um, I consider myself a medium expert on very little things, but I can be the guy that does a little work to learn a topic that may be something that everybody wants to know a little more about, and then be that one-eyed person that leads the blind, right? Be the person that tells you, I spent some time, I tried to learn it, I found that this works, I found that this doesn't work, and this is what I found. You know, that makes excellent VMUG sessions, because there's always someone new coming into the community, or someone that doesn't know anything about the topic that he wants to learn more about, but there's sometimes not that many introductory material. Related to that, in the brown bag, we started doing something called From Zero to Useful, which some people have uh, tried. Jake Robinson, I remember he said, "Oh, that's like treat me like I'm a noob, right? So teach me from zero." And with those, we're trying to make it, since those are recorded and those are an hour, we're trying to make it so that we're actually doing things in your home lab. So you may know nothing about it, but you're going to deploy it. You're going to run through the thing where somebody else that knows, like just how it happens in work. When you sit down with someone, they explain something to you and you get it. So that's,
Learn by doing.
yeah, learn by doing it and explaining, okay, why should I click here? Why is this not working? What should I expect here? So
So
all those things for me have always been super important, because it enables the next generations, right?
Yep.
So Ariel, one thing I've kind of come across lately, since I've gone into full-time consulting, I find myself in rooms with other tech people who are maybe, junior admins or starting out. And a lot of times these guys have kind of just the fear of God in their eyes when they're looking at deploying something, and they're legitimately afraid that they don't want to break and ruin the whole business, which is a legitimate fear.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to find ways to help these guys overcome this stuff. And I think the biggest thing that I've found to help people, maybe you have another suggestion, but the thing I've been telling them is, if you learn how to back stuff up, it can kind of take away some of that fear of screwing things up. Because as long as you know how to back stuff up and restore things, you at least have a way to back yourself out of a situation you might have caused a problem with. So when you come across somebody new like that, is there something that is there a couple of nuggets of wisdom that you have for people to try to get over that hump of being afraid to do things?
Yeah, and I have 3 answers there. There's 3 different answers. To be fair, if you're a network engineer in a big ass company and you're doing the MPLS changes or BGP changes, may God be with you, right? Because if you really mess up, you're really going to mess up. And this is stuff you cannot do in a lab. My first thing would be always work with someone else. Like before you actually apply, and your advice is phenomenal. If you learn how backups and restores work, you will be a super valuable professional for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime you think that this may cause a problem, make sure someone's checking your work. I really love the concept of pair programming. I did a Remember Tech Talk on doing copilot for work. There's a lot of advantages to it. But the main thing is before you do things that you think could be problematic, have someone else check over and talk it over. And that way, if you actually run into a problem, 2 people actually check this. It was not you acting as a cowboy that did this, right? So obviously act as someone that actually knows, right? Your mentor, the person who's teaching you. My second thing would be more related to VMware admins, right? VMware gives us the amazing ability to do a lot of stuff in our home labs. And if you don't have a home lab, open up a hands-on lab and use it for that particular purpose. But you can have a test environment, even if work doesn't give you a test environment. Now, the joke is that everybody has a test environment, so people also have production. But you as the engineer that is taking care and control of your career, invest a little time into running stuff at home so you're comfortable with it. Buy a book. It's still the best training there is to have a book that you can just open up and go to that chapter. So getting a lot of the fear is understanding the concepts, understanding what actually can happen when you do this. My final one there is that you really have to understand the attitudes and values that work in IT. You cannot be a person that brings the network down and doesn't tell anybody. If you mess up, own up to it immediately.
Tell the truth. Yeah.
Tell the truth. Tell exactly what you did. Tell everybody that you think you caused a boo-boo. And one CIO that I met, he told me about he used to be a private pilot, and he told me about the 4 C's. And I can't remember all of them, but one of them was confess, and the other one was comply. So if someone tells you, if you call up, you're in the middle of the night, you call your senior admin, he tells you, okay, I want you to do this, this, and this. Don't fight him. He knows what he's telling you. So be very agreeable to taking direction until you really get your feet wet, right? Or until you really get your bearings. The attitudes that everybody in IT gets are be clear and concise, be good at communicating, own up to any problems, offer to help. All of these things will really help you long term. And I don't know if any of this is going to where you want to be or where your question was, Britton. But let me know if any of that, because what also going to happen is the staff can be so small, right? This junior engineer might have lost his senior engineer, and he's the only guy now left that's going to do all these changes. So telling the person that is already overloaded to go do a home lab is not really going to help much.
No.
But maybe telling him, hey, listen, I know you're working on this. Let's take a look before you deploy it. Let's make a plan. That's where I think that answer may help more.
But I think in general, like, knowledge is the cure for fear,
Yeah.
especially in IT world. So Tony, when he said something about, breaking something and not telling anybody, it brought to mind a waffle iron story.
Oh yes. Okay.
You gotta tell them now because I obviously don't know.
Yeah.
You have to tell it now.
Yeah, so I forgot for a second there what you were talking about, but it just popped back into my head. So Britton and I, my Twitter handle's at Import Car Guy. Britton and I have always been into cars. So Britton and I, since 2001, have been going to auto shows together. We love Ferraris and Lamborghinis, all the hot exotic cars, and we're just real big car enthusiasts. So we were going to the Chicago Auto Show this year and back in February, and we are at our hotel. We were getting our free continental breakfast, and this gentleman was at the waffle dispenser, the waffle mix dispenser. Yeah, the batter dispenser, and he's at the nozzle, and it pops off in his hands, and he's panicking, and batter's going everywhere, and he walks away. He just completely walks away, and batter's spilling out over the spill tray, onto the counter, underneath all the other equipment, dripping down the drawers to the floor. It's going everywhere. And I'm just like, did that guy seriously just do that? Well,
Yeah, sadly.
He must have had a change of heart, because he eventually went to the front desk and said, "Hey, this batter's spilling everywhere." And she's like, "Why did you do that? Why did you just walk away?"
Well, and that reaction for me is a good thing to evaluate whether your manager is a good manager or a bad manager, right?
Yeah.
Because a good manager understands that shit like this will happen, and it's a learning experience, and all we're waiting for from our employees is that they learn the lesson and it doesn't happen again, right? But if a manager comes back to you when you make an IT mess and they say like, "Oh my God, why do you do that? Don't ever touch anything again," that's a bad IT manager. Come on, you're not. Yeah, you're never gonna make that employee get any better with that kind of attitude.
Yep.
So love your shirt, by the way. Yeah.
What's that?
I love a Britain shirt.
Okay.
I am Root.
So you, Ariel, you tend to have this influence, shall we say, over people. And anybody that knows you might even call it an effect. I have coined a particular term I call the Ariel effect. It is where Ariel, for those that don't know, convinces you to do something that you are either maybe already thinking about a little bit, or you're deathly afraid of to do in front of people, and he forces you into it. So, Ariel, could you go into a little bit of the V-Expert program, what it is, how you push people into it, how do you convince them that it's going to be good for their careers?
To be quite honest, I call that voluntelling. That was not me. Literally, I learned it from the rest of the B Brown Bag crew. Cody Bunch and Jonathan Frappier and all those guys have been voluntelling people over Twitter for years. And I just extrapolated that same attitude into real life when I met people. So one of the things I just love meeting people that are on the brink to being great. I just love meeting people that they have a vision, they have ambition, they want to get from here to there, but they're not sure how.
Yep.
Because I've met so many people that have gone from very little to very much. And I know that everybody's journey, while different, has the same things. You just got to do it, right? You can't stay there wondering what if. When you do things, whether you're presenting at a VMUG or starting your blog or whatever, you will learn something, and that something will be valuable, and you will lose fear from there on. So it all related to the V-Expert program. There's something very important that Corey had mentioned at some point, which is that the V-Expert program, it's an award. It's heavily focused on the US and certain parts of Europe and Australia, but it's a global program. It's meant to be a huge program. And even though we get, 1,000, 1,100, I think the latest count was 1,500, we literally have like 3 V experts in all of the continent of Africa.
Wow.
So it's a very focused thing. We have a lot of room to grow in that. Whenever I meet someone that is already doing the most important thing for being a V expert, which is trying to help others understand VMware technologies, that's when I really tell them, listen, have you heard of the expert? There's, it's apart from an award and things like that, you get some free homeland licenses, you get to have a Pluralsight subscription. Shout out to Pluralsight, that's one of the best perks.
Yeah, it's
And
Totally.
and you get to be in the vExpert Slack where you will learn and get into contact with all these amazing people. But I love pushing people into doing things that help others and also making sure that they're documenting it. So when the time to apply comes, first of all, they don't forget. Like if I'm mentoring someone to be a vExpert, I'll make sure that they submit their thing, that they did things in the meantime, that when approval process comes, not approval, but application time comes, that they have something to show that they have been doing it for the right reasons and that they don't forget to do it. There's so many ways to apply to vExpert. My first time that I got to vExpert, I got in through the company inside evangelist option that another VMware employee submits you for. So my SE said, yes, Ariel is our champion inside this company. It's a big company that nobody knows, and he's really doing some stuff to push people forward, so people get certifications, so people do things differently, right? I remember that we had a lot of talk about how to upgrade, and I was in charge of making sure that we got from 5.0 to 5.5, I think. So there was a lot of internal things that he saw, and we actually talked about it, and he said, yeah, I'll for sure be your sponsor. So that's how I first got into it, and there's no shame in coming in that way. But there's so many other people that are just doing good things, and they're just thinking that they're not good enough. And my main thing is making sure people understand that it doesn't, no is temporary, failure is temporary. It's what you will learn in the process of denial is actually super important and will prepare you for that final approval.
Well, it's one of those things where, I actually, I met you through the vExpert program as I had already gotten in, but a good friend of mine, Heath Johnson, who happens to be Britton's older brother, has been mentoring me for the past several years, and he pushed me to apply. And I'm like, am I good enough to get into that program? Have I done enough? And it's not about that. If you're already making the effort, just apply. All they can say is no, and you know what to work on for next time.
Right. I didn't know Heath Johnson was Britton Johnson's brother.
You didn't know that?
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
It's a closely held secret inside VMware. So
you guys were both there at the Milwaukee UserCon. Like Heath presented, I went to his VCF session. I remember you were recording it.
Yeah.
But I never made the connection.
Yep, that's his older brother.
Yeah. So, and he is officially going to be scheduled for our September episode.
Very cool.
I'm finally going to have him on.
I would love to hear, because he was a TAM for a long time. I would love to hear about the things he learned about the TAM program, and especially how.
I don't think he's going to allow me to talk about that on the show.
Oh, come on!
He's so Cloud Foundation focused right now.
Yeah, but now that he's in technical marketing for vCloud Foundation, it's a very different lifestyle. So I would love, like Ariel personally, would love to hear about his change inside VMware and all the things that he thinks about and where he wants to be. I would love to hear.
I'll note that for our conversation.
Yeah, let me know.
Well, I introduced you guys on Twitter last year. You can just ask him yourself.
Thanks, Tony.
I'm sure he would be happy to talk to you.
So when we first talked to you a little while ago, or at the UserCon, you mentioned that you were really excited about VMware on Ansible.
Yeah. So this time that I went to Denver UserCon,
explain to Tony and maybe me. I don't. Maybe Tony knows what this is. I have no idea what this is.
Yeah.
So do you know what it is, Tony? Because I don't.
Very vaguely, it's automation, right?
So I mentioned that VMware had done a call for papers, so I submitted 3 sessions. One was vCommunity and the impact for you and your town and your team, which was the one that the Wisconsin VMUG picked up, and I was super happy to deliver that because it's very near and dear to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was Power CLI and V-documentation, an update, because we delivered that in VMworld. That's when we launched it. But since then, there has been a lot of changes. My final one was vSphere and Ansible from zero to useful. And this session is meant to be like, I don't know what Ansible is. And I want you to be, at the end of the session, to be very comfortable with the concepts. And I want you to be very comfortable with, I can probably run this in my home lab and start tinkering with it. So, and again, that's from zero to useful series that we're trying to get started in vBrownBag. Okay. So Ansible is really one of the new tools that allow for automation, but its value is in that it's very, very, very flexible. It doesn't require agents to be installed everywhere like some other solutions. You can literally talk to not just VMware, but you can talk to almost everything IT-wise. You can talk to networking equipment, to OSs. You can talk to anything infrastructure related, either through SSH or through an API. So when we're talking VMware and Ansible, and let me go back on what Ansible is. Ansible is a command line tool that takes a text file called a playbook to execute tasks. Tasks get executed on an inventory. The inventory can be a text file on that computer, or it can be something that you gather dynamically. The example that we had with VMware and Ansible, the first thing it did was it would reach out to a secrets file that was not, so this text file didn't have our credentials. We had our credentials on another text file. So it imported that text file. The second thing it did is it took the things in that text file, which were username, password, and vCenter, and logged on to the vCenter. When you log on to vCenter, you get a connection token, and you will use that for everything else.
Okay.
The third thing we did was using the VCSA 6.5 and or 6.7 API, we made an HTTP call using something called a module. That module is URI, which is basically, I want to talk to a web server.
Okay.
And we sent out the string so that the vCenter would reply back with all its connected hosts. And we saved that in a variable. So you're looking with this text file called a playbook, which is really a YAML file, .yml. It's very particular in its formatting, but you're basically telling it, do these things, use this username, use this variable, put this over there. But it's little snippets of code that do tasks. Finally, what we did is, with that host list, we called a module that is available for free by Ansible, that in the end uses PYVMommy to talk to vCenter. And we basically set advanced options like syslog global host and making sure that the syslog service was started. So in this presentation, we basically go over how this little text file with all this information, you then in a Linux or Mac machine, you put the command Ansible-playbook, and then you give it the playbook name, and you press enter, and you get all of this information. Now, originally, I learned about Ansible because Carl Capozza and David Kalalui here in Pittsburgh asked me about it. They said, hey, I use Ansible all the time to manage Linux. What can we do with VMware? And I really didn't know. There was not, I Googled it up and there was not a lot of information. But I was extremely lucky that Jonathan Frappier, as part of vBrownBag, he had been putting stuff in his blog posts and in vBrownBag Tech Talks for at least 2 years. And Mr. Les Smith Jr., also from the V community, was also doing stuff with Ansible. So I had some starting points. I remember going to the VTUG, which Chris Williams is one of the leaders of the virtualization technology user group in Boston. And I attended a session that Jonathan Frappier and Kyle Roddy did, talking about vSphere and Ansible and how, especially where it related to the API. So with all this information that we gathered from people in the V community, Carl gave a 15-minute introduction to Ansible with vSphere that we recorded. We put it in a brown bag. I can send you a link. And that's literally what I grabbed as my basis to create an hour-long presentation for Denver. So in the end, Ansible is something you install on any Linux machine, and the commands are super simple, very similar to yum, to sudo yum install Ansible. But since we're also using the Python modules, we did it with pip. So pip took care of installing PYV Mummy and Ansible so the versions matched. And after that, you literally are just making sure your text document is correct. And after that, you run it and you get a whole report on each task succeeding. And finally, what the tool was able to do, if it changed anything in the environment or not. So that example that I gave you is like a super simple introduction example. But 2 weeks ago, we had Brendan Peterson from New York. He works over at, well, basically runs MTV and Viacom. He used it to manage Cisco devices. And you should see that recording. He literally grabs and sets up a new data center, all in Ansible playbooks, finishes the configuration, prints it out, and tells the local engineer, you have to cable it this way. This interface goes here. Okay. And then using something that Cisco Nexus has called POAP, a power on out provision, he sets up the configurations over there. What you do with Ansible is really small. It's literally like, it's a very abstracted configuration where you're saying, okay, I want to make sure that everything has this VLAN. When you run the Ansible playbook, it creates configurations where with a Jinja template or by reaching out to every device, it goes ahead and adds the VLAN to every device that needs it, for example. Very important for also when you're adding a VLAN on hosts, right? If you have it in Ansible, you just have to modify a text file, run it, and there it goes and reaches out not only to the host themselves to add the distributed virtual switch or standard switch port, but also to the Cisco devices to make sure that those interfaces have it done. So what this tool allows is controlling your infrastructure as code, which is something you probably have heard about, but this is how you actually get to that point where everything you're doing in your servers, networking, etc., are text files that everybody else can see, and then you just run it. The best part about things like Ansible, they don't just, it's not like running a parse-CLI script that just does every setting again. It literally checks if it has to do the change and only does the change if it needs to. So it's very efficient as well.
Nice. No
There's a lot of really cool things about it, but I think that flexibility and the fact that it's open source is really, really powerful. Yes, you can buy Ansible. You can buy Ansible from Red Hat and you get enterprise features like role-based access control and better login and things like that. But as far as being useful to the average administrator, the open source version is more than useful.
Cool. Sounds very interesting.
So,
Britton, you have a question. Say it.
It's brewing. It's been brewing. Can you use it yet with NSX?
Yes. Why?
What about Network Insight?
No, hold on. Why can you use it with NSX? You gotta be. You have the answer to this question.
Because of the APIs, right?
Because of the API.
Yeah, because of the APIs, but that's
NSX
what I'm getting.
NSX is one of those products that actually has everything you do in the UI actually has an API call.
Yeah, but what I'm sort of getting at is there are, in order to get anything from Network Insight into NSX, you have to use a middleman medium.
XMLs, right?
Yeah. Or, well, Network Insight outputs XMLs, and you have to then input those with something else. So can you take those XMLs with Ansible and
convert them to something else before? Yes.
And parse them into something else and then stick them in?
Yes, because in the end, the Ansible playbook, even though it's very simple and made to be readable, it's also very flexible. So I've seen actually I call him by his Twitter handle, but Mr. Les Smith Jr. Had one of these code snippets that would take, for example, an XML file and transform it to CSVs. So all of these things you can do because it's, in the end, very similar to a programming language.
Man.
Yeah.
Just one more thing to add to the list, Tony.
I know.
I really will send you, I'll send you both Carl's recording and I'll send you my deck. And I promise you, if you don't think you understand how to use this by the end of those two things, let me know why, and I'll try to improve it for the next time I deliver that talk.
When I tweet this episode out, Ariel, can you reply to that with those links as well?
For sure.
All right.
That's gonna be super useful.
Yeah, I mean, and man, every single time we do one of these, Tony, there's just something else new that just hurts my head.
Okay,
maybe it's because I've been up since 4:30 this morning. But
so to that point, that's the beauty of being the host, because that's one of the things I love about B Brown Bag. I don't need to understand it, but I get kind of the gist from just seeing the presentations, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes a long time. Like the first time I saw Ansible was more than a year ago.
yeah,
So it takes a long time for your brain to catch up and to actually say, well, I will invest the time in learning this. And once you say that, it's like, okay, how? So I bought a book called, well, I was already, I had an O'Reilly subscription. So I downloaded Ansible up and running and I started reading there. It was mostly about how to do it with a web server, but I understood the concepts, right? And then so here's another thing that I'll tell you has been great about Pittsburgh. Those guys I mentioned, Carl and Dave, they're super amazing. When we went to VMworld last year, I got them to sign up, volunteering them, of course, to a hackathon. And I told them, since you guys are interested in Ansible and vSphere, why don't you guys start a group with that? So they were able to get in the hackathon a lot of people with the same mindset, the same questions. Some of them were more advanced than others, and honestly, the group didn't win anything, but they got to meet other people in the community that had the same interest, right? But one of the things that came out of that is when we came back to Pittsburgh, Carl was like, God, I really loved being in a hackathon like that and learning with others. I wish we didn't have to wait a full year to get to this again. And I said, we don't have to. We don't have to. We can have small little hacks in Pittsburgh. And, anybody can bring a topic that they're interested in and we can try to make it work. And we've been doing those for a while. I think the second Monday of every month is when he said we were moving to. We're going to have our fourth one. The third one we had was when Kyle Ruddy was in town. And that one got like 10 people.
Nice.
Justin Sider came all the way from Baltimore for that one. So it's something that if you think it's valuable for you and you want to invest some time on it, get other people excited and just, find a room with a whiteboard and do it.
Yeah, we Tony and I and Heath too went to the hackathon at VMworld this last time around, and like I was on Cody DeArkland's Amazon Echo team, and like the victory for me in that night was installing everything required to run and open a GitHub account.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, the first time we did a hackathon,
code or Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, the first time that we did a hackathon, Carl literally spent an hour of his time showing me how to GitHub. So, yes, that's the kind of thing that changed my career, because after that I set up my blog in in Hugo on my GitHub account, and that's where blogs.arielsanchezmora is now .com is now hosted, and I'm now much more proficient in GitHub than I ever was. So it's all these things that you hear about and you're kind of thinking, yeah, I want to learn about that, but where do I start?
Just an FYI here, there's it looks like 3 different courses on Ansible on Pluralsight.
Yeah.
All highly rated.
Yes, it's literally what I love about the V community itself, though, is that our use cases tend to be related to VMware. And sometimes when we see a course or a website these are tools that are very, very flexible. So we may not find something that applies to us immediately, but it's only a little prodding and you'll find someone. It's like you mentioned, the VMware Code Slack is an excellent place to go. We have an Ansible channel. That's where we've been talking about this for a while.
I'm gonna have to join that.
Yeah. So it's an excellent place to go and be like, I want to learn a little more about this. Where should I go? Asking people how to learn, like how do I get from nothing to useful? And it also applies to like, send me what book should I read, or what links should I see, what video should I see. So that's one of the most useful or valuable things that the V community gives you. And
so that sort of brings up the last kind of topic I want to cover before.
oh, no. I have one before that. I'm sorry. I got to do it.
Okay.
You mentioned you're learning so much. Give me the 2 things that you think are the most important things for any VMware administrator at whatever level they are, that they should be learning right now to make sure they're relevant in the next 5 years.
That's your question for Tony and I?
Yes.
Okay, say it one more time.
Think about the average VMware administrator out there. What 2 things would you tell them to focus on learning so that they remain relevant in the job market in the next 5 years?
NSX or some kind of security product.
Yeah, you're going to go with that. I'm going to say some sort of automation, eliminate mistakes, and gain efficiency.
But I would pile on also, because security is never going away. That's the main reason I'm saying NSX, not just because it's my bag, but just because security will forever be a problem. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, adding on top of that, learning some sort of scripting language to go along with it is going to be at some point, if it's not already, a requirement for a virtualization administrator.
Okay.
Be it
Power CLI,
be it whatever system you're running, having some type of scripting background is going to be a requirement. So, and I'm already behind the 8 ball on that one.
Yeah.
So my answer to those, when people ask me that question, it's Linux and talking to APIs. What do you guys think of that answer?
Oh, I mean,
something like you're going to ask why Linux
everything.
or something. Yeah.
What did you say, Tony?
I said VMware's got an API for everything these days, so it's pretty important.
There's a reason why they're moving, right?
Yep.
But I really think that, like you mentioned, it doesn't matter which platform you automate with, as long as you can find out the way to do things. Power CLI has been and will continue to be the premier scripting resource for VMware administrators. But what I think will happen is, as the future comes faster and faster each time, we will have solutions that are not just VMware, or VMware with something else. And those integrations, the common language will be the API calls.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to kind of bring.
Britton looks like deflated. I'm sorry, man.
No, it's not that I'm deflated.
I'll help you with Ansible. I swear I will.
I'm legitimate. I'm going to start slurring my words. I'm so tired here.
Are you sure it's not that beer that you're holding?
No, it's not. So, I mean, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, so I think this will bring us full circle. But, Ariel, you are like, you had to tell me that you were a TAM, which, for people who aren't familiar with VMware job descriptions, is a technical account manager.
Yeah. It's a really cool job.
I would have never guessed that is actually what you do, because you're so community focused. So is it sort of your hopeful eventual, is that your perfect sweet spot role that you would like to someday be, is just be a community guy?
I don't know what a community guy is.
I don't know. You already are.
Yeah. But I don't know if anybody could really pay for that. I get that there's some people that call developer advocates and stuff like that when you're a software company. But listen, this is my hobby. This is what I love doing. So if it somehow became my work, it would probably be tainted. Right now, it's so pure. And I'm serious. If somebody came to me and told me, Ariel, this is now your job, and you have to meet these requirements, and and you have to do this way,
Yeah.
I would not probably be as happy about it as I am now. I'm super happy to be working for VMware because when I
Yeah.
tell my boss, hey, I got invited to talk to a VMUG, he says, yeah, take care of your stuff and make sure everything's handled, but go.
Community fueled Ariel
Yeah.
Sanchez.
Well, and I think guys like you who are just so community focused, like tonight example, like my whole day today was nothing but V community.
Yes.
I mean, I literally, like, a couple of weeks ago, I got invited to come to this NSX live fire training in Boston by a VMware employee because these live fire trainings are rare and they're for partners only or VMware employees only. And without his community connection to me, I would never have heard about it, so I wouldn't be here. A. B. Once I figured out that I was coming, I sent a random tweet out to Frank, and a whole bunch of other people, and tagged the Boston VMUG Twitter account, and basically said, hey guys, I'm coming to Boston. Who wants to get together on Sunday night for dinner? And boom, instantly there was like 14 people who were in.
So let me start by saying that Boston has one of the best user communities out of the whole country. They have 2 user cons a year for a reason. And the VTUG, which is older than VMUG, is a humongous event. I try to never miss their February event at Patriot Stadium because it combines a lot of the things I love.
I know. I kind of want to come out for it next year.
Yes, you got to do it. We got to meet there. Boston has amazing people. And I see, well, first of all, Mistwire, Chris Williams, is just one of the coolest persons I know in the world.
Yes, and he is ridiculously tall, by the way.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh my god!
But I see good friends in here. Kenji Bates. I think I see Sean Tooling. I see Frank, and oh my god, I lost James Mueller. Those are phenomenal V community guys.
Yeah, it was a great time tonight.
Yeah,
I mean, so that's kind of been like a snippet of my day is just meeting all these guys who I've never met before except for Frank, and just and we talked to Chris on the podcast a few weeks ago. That was my real first introduction with him. I first met him on the first V Brown Bag I did, and then followed up with a podcast with him. But it's just like my whole day has been nothing but V community love, and it's just been amazing.
Yeah. And do you understand what I mean now? That if this was my job, I probably wouldn't be able to appreciate it the same.
Well, and this is kind of my other point is, like, I've always been an introverted guy. I don't get out much. I don't share things with people. I keep everything real close to the chest.
What has that gotten you?
Not a lot of problems.
I've tried to push him through the years.
Yeah, but not a lot of problems. Really, is not a way to live.
No, but it's brought me stability, and
you're the same as the guy that's afraid to do a deployment change.
That's true. I've had to push through that too. But at the same time, like I was telling Chris and Kanji on the way because they were dropping me off tonight, I'm like, if I told Britain 10 years earlier what Britain right now was doing tonight, he'd have been like, no, he's not going to do that.
Well, and that's what the V community does. That's why it's so special. I really think that there's...
And I was able to sit with all these guys who had really never met before and have great conversations and laugh my head off. And I only had one drink. And it was just a great night. I mean, I can't imagine. And I knew even all, like, for 3 weeks that this was going to be just a throwdown, kind of an awesome night. And all because of, this V community influence that exists. And it's real. And it's been my whole day today. So for all of the V community that's out there and for all the advocacy you do for it, Ariel, thank you.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, listen, Tony, I had a message for you from @VGonzilla, Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah.
that guy discovered the V community by himself. Like his job is not to be a VMware administrator. He decided he wanted to be a VMware administrator. So he bought himself a book and he has this little home lab. But he found Twitter by himself, and he found you, and he found me, and he
Yep.
started reaching out to people. I know you helped him a lot setting up his home lab. I know I helped him just a little bit. That fact that someone can come from zero and find helpful people that will take time of their time to do a Zoom session and basically say, yeah, well, this is what you're missing, or this or that. That's what makes it so special. These relationships grow with time, and you're planting seeds all over the world every time you get someone that to tell them how great this community is and how open to newcomers and to help others is. And those seeds, especially now with some time, I've been BXper since 2015. I really see those trees growing and all these friends that you gain everywhere. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me is it's no longer about the technical sessions and what can I learn when I go to these events. It's about what new friends am I going to make and what old friends am I going to get to hang out with and have some laughs with. I mean, the learning comes naturally. Any conference can give you that, but you can't get the community interaction and just gosh, yeah, you hit it on the head there, Britton. It's awesome. All the community events that I've been to, it's just a blast. I mean, our user con was a blast. We had so many great people fly in, and the after event that we did the baseball game at Miller Park afterwards. I mean, gosh, I didn't want to go home. I eventually had to, but it was.
Don't tell your wife.
Yeah.
No, but that's one of the things I love about this year, that I get paid to go to VMUGs that I just wouldn't be able to go otherwise, right? For my wife and I going back to Denver, even if it was just a few hours in total, it just felt so great to be in a town that we love. And for me particularly, I had mentioned this. Scott Cipher was introduced as a leader in my first VMUG meeting. For some really unfortunate circumstances, he became the only leader in Denver. And he was the one that picked up my session. Not really remember me, but I remember him when I saw his Twitter. So it was really fun that a person that I had met in 2014 turned out to be the reason that I was back in Denver. So you never know how these things are going to work out, but in the V community, they most often do work out. So that's pretty cool.
Okay. Well, hey, let's try to start wrapping it up here, guys. Is there anything else you kind of want to talk about, either of you?
Just don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and get involved in the community, because the rewards are going to be beyond what you could even imagine.
And I also have to encourage people. Tony the other day was saying I'm some kind of celebrity. That's just not the whole point, right? If we can help each other, that's all that really matters. Don't be afraid to reach out, even to the people you idolize. In my case, it was Scott Lowe, and I made a relationship with Scott outside of just that one moment, right? Anytime you reach out to people, you really start a friendship. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask, and don't take it personally if people are too busy to reply. But most often than not, they will reply. So it's really, like you said, Tony, have no fear.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. It's been.
You look ready for a nap. I'm about to tuck you in here. And
I am like.
But I'm so happy that it was because of the good reason, right? Having the day around and under the sun and watching anime and cosplay. I'm sorry, doing B community things. I love anime, by the way. I was so jelly when you sent that photo. And, just having that, it's so great.
That whole like Japan festival that we ran across was like the last thing I expected to see in downtown Boston today.
Boston is a geeky town, man. It's a great town,
but it's cool.
You need to get yourself to legal seafood before you leave.
All right, I'll look it up. Okay, guys, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'll do the final recording music and stuff in post. So
Sounds good.
Thanks again, guys.
Let us know if you need Tony and myself to sing you a lullaby or something.
Oh, I don't think I'll have any problem sleeping tonight. That's for sure.
Airbnb.
All right. That is it for Gigacast 15. Thanks to Ariel Sanchez Mora. I probably still said it wrong, didn't I?
No, you did. You got it right. So this is a fun one. People ask me if Ariel is the right pronunciation. The Spanish pronunciation is Ariel.
Oh, of course. You have to roll your R's.
But
Ariel.
But since everybody knows Little Mermaid and she was Ariel, that's what I'm gonna keep. When people ask me, when I tell them Ariel and they're like Aaron, I'm like, no, like the Little Mermaid. They get it like that. So I just have to use it to my advantage now.
Nice.
Under the sea. See, no,
You got to kiss the girl.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, enough. We could go all night. Tony, thanks for being my ever present co-host.
No problem. Get some sleep, buddy.
Yeah.
Ariel, good to see you too.
Good to see you, Tony.
And thanks for all of your efforts, everybody, and go V community. And we will talk at you next time. Oh, quick crap! One last question, Ariel.
Go for it.
I booked another guest for the show. Are you familiar with Andre Libovici?
Yeah, I believe he's from Brazil, right?
CTO from Datrium.
Right.
He's going to be our next guest.
Very cool.
I don't know anything about Datrium or hyperconverged stuff, but he reached out after I sent a couple of questions on Twitter about hyperconverged stuff. What would be like the best couple of lead-in questions to talk about hyperconverged with him?
So I'll give you a good start, a good place to go learn about Datrium first.
Okay.
Datrium paid V Brownback to do something called.
Oh yeah, I did see those. Yes.
Yeah. So they have a whole video series on how to set up their product from scratch, like from the moment the box arrives to get it working. Yeah, the build days. Those are Alistair's that he normally travels to these places and does it, but they're really, really, really valuable. Alistair's a smart dude. He makes really incisive questions.
And he has an awesome mustache.
Oh, he's just an amazing guy. He really is. With Chris Williams, most of the B Brownback crew are just amazing, solid people. So I would tell you to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and see that. What I remember from Datrium is very old, like from 2014. But, the things that everybody wants to know, how are they different? Why would I choose you over the market leaders, right? Mm-hmm. And the two big questions here are Visa and Nutanix. So I would ask pointed questions because, honestly, you want your podcast to bring value, right?
Yeah.
But I would also focus or ask the question that if I don't think he was with Datrium at that point, but I think you guys remember that they gave us, the vExperts, a Raspberry Pi.
Yep.
You remember that? I still use that. That has been one of the best vExpert gifts ever.
That was the year before I got vExpert, so
Oh my God!
That's
my DNS, my NTP. It's everything in my home lab. I would ask him, and just seeing that they, sponsor B Brownback for the Tech Talks and other things, they really have. I think they have their heads on right about how to engage the V community.
Mm-hmm.
So I would also ask them about that, about how they see the V community is bringing value to their mission, because I think they really get it in that sense.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he was super excited. I mean, I asked him if he wanted to do it, and he was like, "Yes, let's do it, schedule it." And then I like forgot about him for 2 days, and then he followed back up with me right away. So I'm like, okay, he's really serious about this. So
you don't get to be a CTO. I mean, Andre has been in the V community for a long time.
Yeah.
He was, I think, at one point he was one of the best. Was it VDI guys? I know that he has reinvented himself at least 2 times. So you're gonna find a person that is very experienced and also very, very versed in the V community. So I think it will be a great session.
He's probably going to be our first interview that neither Tony or I have ever interacted with him before. So
yeah,
he's an excellent guy. I really think he's from Brazil.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun as well. And I think he lived in Australia a while. So ask him his life story, how he became a CTO is going to be fun.
Yeah. So cool. All right. Well, thanks, Ariel. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you so much.
I will post this as soon as possible. No promises tonight.
This plays perfectly well into what we were just talking about. Niren just sent out a tweet that said, "Let's play first moments with Ariel Sanchez more. I'll start." It was the New York, New Jersey VMUG, and he was super fun to talk with. I also met VMiss 33 at that VMUG and many others. It was an awesome day. And then he's tagged Nick Scola, Wildcard 78, Anton Z NYC, AZ _ at New York, Tim Davis, and Jay Colts.
Very nice.
Yeah. He just posted that 4 minutes ago. I was looking for the leading tweet thinking that he was responding to what we were talking about. That's how relevant that one was. I don't see any leading behind
So it
that
just
one,
randomly pops out of nowhere to the Twitterverse.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's like, wow. That was pretty funny.
All right, cool. I'm going to cut it here. So thanks, guys. Ariel, I'm sure we'll talk to you again sometime.
Yeah.
And go from there. So sweet. Peace.
Get some sleep. Have fun learning NSX this week.
I will.